Chairman, I would like to introduce Chris Schacht.
Thank you. It's only 6 days ago, many of us were here for the Westpac AGM, and saw a form of masochism if you're a shareholder in banks now, unfortunately, but we keep turning up, hoping things will get better. My first comment, before I comment about the annual report, I want to pay tribute to the 30-odd thousand plus ordinary workers in the bank. I have been, by May of next year, a customer of this bank for 50 years. And the only reason I've stayed through all the scandals of the last decade or more is because of the service I get from the local bank teller, the local branch manager, etc. I pay a compliment to them that they are carrying the reputation of the bank, not the board or the senior executives. That's why some of us have stuck to the bank, and the board ought to recognise it very much. Last year at this AGM, I made a number of strong comments about the result of the Royal Commission's recommendations. And I have to say the then Chairman and the then CEO stood up and made remarks about things are going to change. Well, within a few weeks, they'd both gone. They didn't indicate that to us then. I have to also say, as a regular attender, Mr. Chairman, as a shareholder, since I became a shareholder in 2003, I've been to a majority of these AGMs, and I've been through, I can't remember the number of CEOs we've now had, or chairman of the board. But every time there was a scandal, the same words that you said today and the same words of Mr. McEwen, we'll be better, we will get on top of it. But next year another bloody scandal turned up, something else went wrong. It has not changed, and that is the worrying thing about the bank. I will speak later briefly about the remuneration report and the election of directors, etc. But I've just got to make this comment. Last year I said, the board, you are failed capitalists. You still are failed capitalists because of the destruction of shareholder value. Billions of dollars have been wiped off the value of this bank because of the performance of the board and the senior executives over the last decade or more. 20 years ago, when Nobby Clark was the CEO, we were the biggest bank in Australia. We are now just ahead of ANZ by a couple of billion. So there has been destruction of our value. We are not just shareholders, we are part owners of the bank. You have destroyed billions of dollars, and on that basis alone, you can use the phrase, you are failed capitalists. Secondly, because of the persistent breaches of the law, running into cases, running into thousands, which the Royal Commission exposed. I said it last year and I'll say it again, as a result of today's headline, which none of us knew was coming. You are the unacceptable face of capitalism because you have failed to obey the law. If I broke some law by 20 or 30,000 cases, I reckon I'd be away for life in jail. You treat the law to deal with governance as though it's separate from criminal law or any other law. No. If you break the law, wherever the law is, you should pay the penalty. There is no exception. And then the last stunning thing today in the paper, I just about coughed up my coffee over breakfast when I read in the front page. Not only is the regulator now looking at further examples running into thousands, they then raise the phrase unconscionable conduct. That is the most serious breach of the Trade Practices Act corporation. I was many years ago a small business minister, and I was proud of the fact that with the support of good old Ronnie Boswell from the National Party, we strengthened the unconscionable conduct provisions of the Act to protect small business from the economic power of big business. It's still not strong enough in my view, but it is the most important power. So what do we find today, Mr. Chairman? We look like being taken action against either individual or the bank for breaches of unconscionable conduct. I find that extraordinary. Extraordinary. So I want to ask you about that. So I'll now, because of the phrase unconscionable conduct, about the arguments about the remuneration and benefits to to senior executives, share options, extra payments, etc. Unfortunately, I now have to add to the other two descriptions I used of failed capitalist, unacceptable face of capitalists. Now, unfortunately, the board, you are an example of unconscionable greed, of allowing this to continue. And I am sick of coming to the meeting and finding different new CEOs, different chairmen saying, we got it under control, we'll fix it. That is not the case. I also want to, and as an example, the previous speaker raised the unfortunate case in some ways of the fraud of the former, now been charged with fraud, of the former executive assistant, the CEO. What really stood out to me, it wasn't another senior member of the board or of the senior executive class that identified this breach, this fraud. It was a whistleblower way down in the bank, an ordinary employee. They put the finger on it, they could discover it, but no one at the top level, at the 30th floor in the executive headquarters could find it. So this person got away and been charged now. It runs into millions of dollars. One of the things that came out is that the fraud that was going on at being charged with, the money was, there was no tender process to employ that company that provided services. You would have thought surely someone in the board or the senior executive would have said, if we're paying all of this every year, shouldn't it be put to tender, competitive tender? Isn't that good capitalism? And it wasn't. This is what I find astonishing as an example that there is a bubble at the top. And I have to say, I trust of all the bonuses you may have paid, did that whistleblower way down in the bowels of the bank who put the finger on it, did they get a bonus, a promotion? No, they probably got pushed sideways and made in charge of lending at the Inaminka Bank if we had one, etc. So I am very strong that I have to say the board has not performed. You're going to put up later on election of directors. I notice, and I'll say this very briefly, I notice that Miss Fagg has just joined the board. So I don't hold her to account, but every other board member has been there long enough to know you have to be held accountable. If that is not how this system works, then nothing works. And it is the honourable thing to do is leave the board when this level of bad governance takes place. It's just, I come from another system of career in politics. I got to tell you, if I had done 1% of what this board has allowed to happen, I would have been thrown out of Parliament House, drowned in Lake Burley Griffin, and everyone would have cheered. But if you're in the bank, not only this one, I see today ANZ's in the gun too, all of them. No, you can just ignore it. We're not really guilty of breaking the law. It's an unfortunate mistake. So I'm sorry to go on, but I just want to say to you, Mr. Chairman, you cannot go on destroying shareholder value. I'll just give you one last example. I bought my shares in 2003 for $32 a share. Today, they're 25. Now, a couple of times in the last 16 years, they got to 40. When I bought my shares, if I'd bought the same amount in the Commonwealth Bank, despite all their problems, I would have doubled my money. I also had the good luck at the same time to buy some shares for $11 in CSL, right? Today, I haven't seen today, but last night they were $280 a share. And I look at their board and I look at our board. How could that board do all of that for shareholders and our board reduce shareholder value by billions? Their company now, CSL, this really sticks out. When I bought the shares, they were worth a couple of $1 billion capitalisation. When you were worth tens and tens of billions of dollars. They are now a value as a company $56 billion bigger than the NAB, and you've been going 200 years. That is an example that you should compare yourself. and maybe you might want to invite a couple of their directors to join our board. One thing I notice, and maybe Ms Fagg's a good example, a majority of the CSL board are scientists. No, nerdy scientists. But what have they done? Ms Fagg has got a science degree. She's on the board of CSIRO. So maybe you can bring some of that science to the board rather than just accounting skill. But that, to me, is an example of why I can say you are failed capitalists. You have destroyed shareholder value to the tune of tens and tens of billions of dollars. And Mr McEwen, good luck. I trust when you take over, go back. Read what happened to the Homeside scandal. Read about the foreign exchange. This is the last 15 years. Read it all and get it fixed in your head that nothing what you say will, other than to do performance about how we're going to change this bank so that maybe most of us don't have to come back here and whinge on good reason about how our bank has had its value destroyed by incompetence by the board and senior management.
Thanks, Mr. Schott. I'm just going to respond to a couple of the points you've raised. First of all, you paid tribute to the 34,000 people that work at National Australia Bank, and I'd just like to endorse those comments. In the 9 months I spent in the acting chief executive role, I visited a large number of branches, contact centres, operations centres, business centres, and I think our long-suffering staff deserve a tremendous support, because they have put up with what has been, I think, a relentless parade of extremely stressful events for them.
Which is not their fault.
And it's absolutely not their fault. And I 100% agree with that. And I know that our leadership team in the when we made the decision that we were not paying out any short-term variable reward to the senior executives, to a person said, can we at least make sure that our frontline staff get some reward? And that's a tribute.
Are they still eligible at their level for a bonus?
There are very small performance rewards available at that level. It is, I think we'll talk about it further in the REM section, but the total amount of our remuneration spend across the company, it's roughly an 87% fixed pay and 13% variable. So when we talk about bonuses, I don't want people to get the sense that, other than for a few at very senior levels, that these are anything more than relatively small amounts.
Thank you.
Can I also, I'm going to pick up a couple more points. You asked about, did the whistleblower get rewarded or somehow damaged? One of the key elements of whistleblower legislation in Australia is anonymity. So what I can say is that, as far as I'm aware anyway, the anonymity of the whistleblower in this case was protected. And therefore,
was protected.
It was protected.
Okay, well, if he wants to put his hand up or she put her hand up, then I think you should give that person a promotion.
I would personally love to do that myself. I just want to take then the more poignant part of your comments, which is, and it's something that I've thought deeply about, and even coming onto the board and taking on the role I have, which is, we all acknowledge that over the last 20 years, this organisation has failed its shareholders on a number of fronts. And it's one of the earliest conversations I had with Ross in taking on the role, which is, this is not for the faint-hearted, because we will not be able to change everything about this company instantaneously by taking on our roles. We are setting ourselves in here for hard work. But there's only one way that I will measure success for Ross or myself and for the board in fulfilling our roles, and that is that we reverse that 20 years of underperformance. We have made some progress relative to the other banks over the last few years, but nowhere near enough. And I understand and accept that. Thank you.